best entertainment on the earth. Tune in for Comics with Perch.
Hey everybody, this is Perch. With the news that Discovery is closed, I guess, the sale of DC, there's a lot of talk about needing a new showrunner, somebody who could take the company to a new place where they respect the classic characters and they put the right emphasis on the universe. The commentary that keeps coming up is that Batman and Superman and Flash and Wonder Woman are more recognized worldwide than the Marvel characters. However, the films are doing just pitiful business compared to what Disney is able to do with Marvel. So this has led to at least the speculation, and it's maybe fact at this point, certainly a lot of rumors, but in the statement, they're looking for somebody who can be the new head of DC Media, which includes certainly the movies, TV, and then ultimately comics. This is somebody who thinks like a business person, somebody who has a lot of corporate synergy in mind, somebody who can take comics to new places, worry about that distribution, but more importantly, get the movies to where they need to be. So while comics is part of that, comics is probably not the primary concern. So of course, with this news, a lot of people have been bouncing around who would be the best person for the job. The line, "We need our own Kevin Feige," keeps coming up for DC. So the name that's been tossed around quite a bit lately is James Gunn. And when I say tossed around, I mean in a fan casting kind of way. There's no indication that that's a serious choice being considered at Discovery Warner. It's just pure speculation on the part of a lot of people who would love to see that happen. So on one hand, that makes some sense. James Gunn's Suicide Squad was very well received. It was considered a more accurate comic interpretation in the movie. It both dug into kind of very classic characters and seemed to kind of forge some new ground while also getting the best out of actors like John Cena, who had a breakout performance as Peacemaker, and ultimately led to the Peacemaker TV series, which also was pretty well regarded. People seemed to like it. It was generally considered one of DC's better attempts. And in many cases, getting looked through the kind of the glass of entertaining for the movies, not completely accurate to the comics, but faithful enough to the comics that people who are comic collectors, comic fans, view James Gunn as one of their guys. Now, this is an interesting turnaround, by the way, from a couple of years ago when he was fired from Disney, and there's this entire issue around kind of, offensive jokes he made about the Holocaust and pedophilia, and I think there were some comments about like Gambit's junk, or anyway, there was there was this whole run where he got fired, and then people were like, "Oh, wait a minute, we didn't want him fired. We kind of like Guardians of the Galaxy. We'd like more of those." And so it's like, no, hire him back. And eventually, Disney did about a year later. So, but it's an interesting kind of twist is the wrong way to put it, but at least kind of turn of events that we got to this place. So, all that said, is James Gunn a good pick for comics, for movies, for basically being the Kevin Feige, the showrunner of DC? And I don't think so. In my view, I think it would be a pretty terrible pick. And I say that for kind of two big reasons. The first is that, if we're looking for a business person, a showrunner, somebody to kind of really kind of helm the comics and movies and everything else and be on top of that, then I don't really want somebody who's made good breakout films, a director, a writer, to be wrapped up in all that stuff. The reality is, if I like James Gunn's work, then I don't want to have him in charge of everything because he's going to wind up doing a lot less of the things I like. I'm not talking about Marvel. I just mean there's be less time for directing because now he's trying to, engage kind of corporate synergy of characters and get other publishing. It's a bad choice for that reason. But it's also a bad choice in that it really reflects kind of many of the bad choices that go on in comics, where the newest, flashiest thing is what people care about. So yeah, Suicide Squad was good. I don't think it was the best comic movie by a long shot, but it was fine. It's better than some of the other things that DC has done. And Peacemaker was entertaining. I mean, it was okay. Again, I didn't find it the best show ever. Personally, I liked the first season of Doom Patrol better than Peacemaker. But regardless, Just because somebody had 2 recent hits doesn't mean, hey, let's actually put this guy in charge of the entire company and everything else with it. I think that's a weird choice. Gunn does have quirky humor, and his stuff works for Guardians of the Galaxy and Suicide Squad and characters like Peacemaker. Do I want to see James Gunn's Batman? Not really. Now, granted, I think that he has probably the professionalism that he would, not if he cares about the comics, and he seems to have a lot of loyalty toward the source material, then he's not going to write a Guardians of the Galaxy style Batman or Superman. But all the same, this doesn't seem like a good pick you want for somebody who's going to run this business like a business. I have nothing against James Gunn. Seems fine. I'd like to see him do more movies. I think that if Warner Media is smart, they will certainly have James Gunn be their new, Joss Whedon, for lack of a better word, and put him in charge of several movies at DC and TV shows. It'd be crazy not to. So they should absolutely do that. But what they shouldn't do is take somebody who has a pretty strong talent, who can produce movies that make money for them, and suddenly saddle them with a giant job of running the entire company. So this gets back to, who is the right person to do this? Well, for a moment, look at Kevin Feige. Why was he a good pick for Marvel? It wasn't because he had deep love for the comics. It's that he had a sense of what he needed to do to not only take popular IP comics, characters that are recognizable, and turn them into a movie franchise, but also how to stack those movies together so that each one added to the whole, and you got the, sum is greater than its parts effect that started to kick in. He had a good sense of release timing. Not a lot of people have noticed or cared about this, but they were very, very clever in how they timed the movies to come out, often muscling out other films that were going to be on the same weekend or weekend before it. I mean, Marvel strategically, Disney Marvel, in this case, the MCU, strategically attacked the industry in a way that, allowed them to kind of choke out a lot of their competition. You need somebody who thinks like that. Unfortunately, there's not a lot of people, but if I was looking for somebody who is in that realm, I'd be looking for somebody who has a track record of taking, TV series and adapting them to movies and actually making money off of it. I'd look for somebody who understands kind of, licenses and doing other forms of business. I'd look for somebody who, has at least an understanding of, if I package this in the right way, I can almost create my own genre. So not somebody who's going to go and say, we need a shared universe too, or we need superhero movies too, but somebody who's going to go, you know what, if I put this together in the right way, and I hire really, really well, I do get James Gunn on to do more movies, maybe a handful of others that have done well. James Wan certainly seems to have done a good job for them. Then I can create a category of my own that I own. And I can merchandise it with toys and with shirts and licensable materials and guest comics and everything else to make it a real, a powerful business. But I think you're going to need somebody who has an MBA, somebody who has a lot of experience actually, taking properties and making something out of them. I mean, I'd be going for probably somebody who was an executive at Netflix during the kind of some of how they built up that platform. I might go to somebody who did some of the curation for Apple TV, even though Apple TV hasn't been the biggest success. The way that they chose series and chose properties, it worked in the sense that they were able to see some value and do some things with it. I think the key here is I'd go looking for somebody that we haven't heard of, somebody who's done a decent job being handled a couple properties and can turn them around into money. That's really what's needed. And ultimately, at the end of the day, that's what I hope they get. James Gunn, I hope he does more movies. I hope he does more shows for them. I hope he does not get bogged down in a lot of business stuff. But, other names, I mean, Jeff Johns comes up, but I think that ship has sailed on a few different fronts. Other than that, I don't think there is somebody currently in DC who fits this role. I also don't think you go and you get a Joe Quesada or you get somebody from Marvel to fit that role either. I would look for somebody who truly is an outsider, somebody who, again, respects source material, but knows how to package it up and make something bigger out of it. I'd go looking for somebody like that. And I think, I don't think there are many people like that, but I think those people do exist. And if your goal is to really build a TV media empire, or here's one other name I'll throw out there. I think this kind of strikes me the same way as James Gunn. But you could always go knock on, Mark Millar's door and see what he's up to. Now, granted, I think this is a guy who'd be maybe perfect to kind of be the editor-in-chief or showrunner for the comic division. And you pair that guy up maybe with somebody that he likes or knows at Netflix. But you know, the transfer of Millar World comics to the movies hasn't been the strongest either. So I would look for somebody who kind of fits in that area. Anyway, it's fun to fantasy cast. So who do you want running Warner Media DC who's the Kevin Feige of DC that you would hire? Let me know in the comments below. Like and subscribe, of course, and thanks for listening.